All right, can you see my screen? Very
Yes.
good.
Yes.
All right, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom DeBlasi. I am the steering committee chair for the Code Advisory Committee of NCSEA. And let me start off just by giving you a brief overview of the committee structure. The Code Advisory Committee is composed of 5 subcommittees. We've got a Wind Engineering Committee chaired by Emily Guglielmo. We've got a Seismic Revision Subcommittee chaired by Thomas Hausler. We've got a Special Inspections and Quality Assurance Subcommittee chaired by Greg Robinson. We've got an Existing Buildings and Structural Retrofit Subcommittee that's co-chaired by Michael Fillion and Carl Rubenacher. And for anything that doesn't fit in any of those other categories, we've got a General Requirements Subcommittee that's co-chaired by Ed Houston and John Grenier. Now, each of these subcommittees has a distinct structure to it. Each one has its own chairperson, as I just pointed out. Each one also has a recording secretary. The recording secretary is someone who is selected out of the young member ranks, who has an interest in the particular topic or particular focus of that subcommittee. And then we have voting members, member organization liaisons, and corresponding members. The voting members, we limit those to 2 per region. You see the little map over on the left here. We've got 4 regions. We also allow each subcommittee to add 2 at-large members should they so desire. And the reason for these regions is to make sure that we don't focus on, we try to have a balance between the different parts of the country. The voting members are members that are entitled to reimbursement should they attend an NCSEA event, and they are the ones, as the name infers, that would be voting on any issues that would come before the committee. The MO liaisons, the member organization liaisons, are members of the committee who are appointed by the member organizations to represent them on the subcommittee. And that's something we're trying to get a little more use out of. We have many of the subcommittees that do not have member organization liaison representatives on there. And that's something I would encourage those of you participating today to recommend that your MOs get someone to do that. So we really want to develop a better back and forth communication with the member organizations. In addition to a member organization liaison, each member organization can add an alternate MO liaison in there as well. Last but not least, we've got corresponding members. The corresponding members are generally industry affiliated groups, standard development organizations. But in addition to those, they could be engineers who are members of NCSEA member organizations or not, who just have an interest in the subject, but they are not MO liaisons or voting members. For those of you who might be interested, at the present time on the Existing Buildings Subcommittee, we do have an opening for a voting member from Region 2. And on the Seismic Subcommittee, we have openings for 1 voting member each from Regions 2, 3, and 4. Unfortunately, in 2020, 2021, like many of us, COVID kind of stifled some of the stuff that we wanted to do, so we didn't have as many accomplishments as we would have liked to have had, but we still did all right. At the virtual summit last year, the Code Advisory Committee spearheaded 4 presentations. We had a panel discussion on an inside look into codes and standards development. On that, we had representatives from ACI 318, AISC 341, ASCE 7, and a member of the General Requirements Subcommittee of NCSEA. We had a presentation on tornado wind loads for the practicing engineer. And at the time when that was delivered, we weren't sure if the tornado wind loads were going to be adopted into ASCE 7 at 722. And based on a meeting last week, Emily informed us that that is going to be happening. We had a presentation on workflow processes for seismic calculations and then understanding changes to the 2021 IEBC structural provisions. Throughout the year, the committee is asked to review code-related articles that are proposed for Structure Magazine, just to make sure that they are accurate in our opinion for what they for the information they're presenting. And we also review presentations that are proposed for NCSEA webinars for the same reason. In 2021-2022, we've got a number of goals ahead of us. Right now, we are in the midst of the 2024 iCode development cycle. At the present time, we are reviewing and offering testimony on Group A code change proposals. The hearings for Group A started a week ago Monday, and they're going to continue through May 5th. The Group A generally does not contain too much structural information. Usually there's a few peripheral things that we need to opine on, but it's not a big undertaking at this point. The big undertaking is going to take place in 2022 when Group B gets underway. So during 2021, we will be developing some code change proposals to present for Group B. And we're also going to be collaborating with structure standards development organizations who are going to be putting together proposals and possibly put together some joint proposals. One of the things that we're trying to do is to develop resources for the practicing structural engineers. One thing that we realized is that the Code Advisory Committee over the years had done a very good job of dealing with the code development process, but when that wasn't taking place, we probably weren't doing as much for the membership as we could. So now we're trying to get some resources together on the Wind Engineering Subcommittee. There's a white paper under development for topographic effects, as well as another one for exposure categories. Another thing that is being spearheaded by the Wind Subcommittee is an online forum for Q&A. It's going to start off being referred to as Ask the Wind Committee or something along those lines, where we could give, quote, free and friendly advice. This is something that people were a little leery of in the past because they were afraid that we were going to acquire liability that we really don't want to acquire. But we found out through NCSEA's attorneys that if we preface it properly, then it is a tool that we can offer. And having recently, well, not recently, but believe it last September, asked a question of ASCE 7 and still not gotten a response. I think this is a service that will be very beneficial to our membership. It's going to start out with written responses, but hopefully we're going to progress to the point where we could give video responses to the questions. And if all goes well, this would expand from the Wind Engineering Subcommittee to all the other subcommittees. We intend to continue to deliver presentations at the NCSEA Summit and to assess webinar content and structure articles. One of the things that we will be doing probably later in the year or next year will be polling the membership for suggested changes to ASCE 7. While NCSEA itself doesn't have any influence over ASCE 7, you've probably noticed over the years that there's a lot of cross-pollination between the organizations, and we've got a lot of people who are active in NCSEA who serve on ASCE 7 committees, and when they hear that the practicing structural engineers who are using their document feel that these changes need to be made, they take it with heart when they see that 1,000 people said that this is something they'd like to see changed. And finally, what we'd really like to do is improve our interaction with the code advisory committees of the member organizations. As I mentioned, we need to get more MO liaisons active on our committees. So I, again, encourage you to have your organization push for members to join. It's not a big commitment, but it's nice to have people on the phone so that there's no misunderstandings between the member organizations and NCSEA's Code Advisory Committee. A lot of times the member organizations might have suggestions for code change proposals. If you've got those, I would recommend that rather than taking them forth yourself, bring them to the NCSEA Code Advisory Committee. And if they feel that it is appropriate, then we will bring that on the MO's behalf to the ICC during the code change hearings and present it there. So those are our goals for 2021, 2022. At this point, I'd like to open it up to you folks, see if you've got any questions on anything. I mean, one of the common questions I get from individuals is, can I attend a subcommittee meeting simply as a guest? And back in 2019, what we had done at our Structural Engineering Summit is we had advertised all of the meetings to the attendees of the summit, and anybody who wanted to was welcome to do so. This year, we're not sure if we're going to be having the face-to-face meetings or not, but if we are having the face-to-face meetings, anybody is welcome to attend as a guest. In addition, if somebody wants to participate in the meetings virtually, and that is the way that the overwhelming majority of the meetings are held, I wouldn't say overwhelming majority, I'd say all of the meetings are held with NCSEA right now. Just contact me, let me know which committee that you're interested in, or go on the NCSEA website and contact that committee chair, and they will put you on the distribution list. We're always looking for more people to get involved, and if you find out that you are really interested, then hopefully you'll be a committee member at some point. Anybody else? Come on now, somebody's got to have a question.
I have a comment.
Yes.
The last time we went through the code adoption process here in South Carolina, there was one item that I tried to get modified, and the Home Builders Association chimed in and said, well, that should be fixed at a national level. So I said, okay. So I contacted one of our committee members and said, hey, this needs to be changed. It got changed, and it's in the 2021 code. So I'm anxiously awaiting it to come up in our hearings.
Excellent.
So contacting this committee works.
We can be very effective. Anyone else? I see we've got our president here. Any comments from you, Mr. Quisenberry?
Great job, Tom. You're amazing. I'm glad to see that you're back in country.
I'm not.
Working hard on behalf of NCSEA.
Come on, there's got to be some questions.
I guess building on Jesse's comment, specific to the ICC process, if an individual has something, do they need to run their proposal through their MO and then route it to NCSEA to advocate for them, or can an individual directly contact someone at NCSEA and say, hey, here's something I'd like you to advocate for?
It would be preferred if it came through the MO. That's not to say if it came directly through an individual that we wouldn't pay attention to it, but the proper chain of communication would really be from the MO to NCSEA's Code Advisory Committee.
I'll go again, Tom. Is there any way that these subcommittees of Code Advisory can provide technical content to an MO that's looking for education?
I think if an MO was looking for a specific topic, they could certainly reach out to us and we could put them in touch with somebody who would be an appropriate speaker for that topic. Come on, we're only halfway there, folks. There's got to be some questions.
Emily, I think, didn't we just at the last board meeting, we were talking about the new wind study that's coming out? I don't know if that's appropriate to talk about here since the airspace is dead. It may be a good time to talk about what's cooking there.
Yeah, sure. I guess maybe I'll go way back in time, maybe even 6 years ago now, as ASCE 722 was thinking about starting. Our code advisory committee put out a survey to all of you practicing engineers, and it had different focus areas, but in the wind area, we asked some questions about what you wanted changed. And there were 4 big themes that came out of that. We took them to ASCE 722. And as Tom said, it was incredibly compelling as we as individuals put proposals in under the reason statement. We said things like, because see survey of practicing engineers, that's why we want to do this. And those ballots all passed. So the one thing that we asked for on your behalf that we heard was to take the wind methods in chapter 27 and 28. So that's how you come up with your main wind force pressures. They're 2 different methods, to take them and make them one, whether it's pick one or the other or merge them. It's confusing to have 2. That's what we heard. So we took that request to ASCE 7 and they said compelling, but we have to do research. And so NCSEA actually contributed to the Pink Cow Foundation, putting together some funding, and Professor Greg Kopp was engaged and was neck deep in research as the code cycle for ASCE 722 expired. And we didn't quite get there, but we are very close to creating a method that kind of takes pieces of 27 and 28 and creates one relatively simple method of generating wind loads. In order to finish it, we have to do some wind tunnel studies, and that takes further funding and also advisory roles. And so NCSEA again has partnered with a lot of different organizations to help support that. And that research is now fully funded. The team is put together. That research will continue between code cycles. And then ideally ASCE 728 will have this one method. And again, I know that's a really long-winded way of saying your voice matters. It was a very strong consensus in the poll that was taken. We took that to ASCE 7. It takes a bit of time, but I'm pretty confident that at the end of the day, we will have accomplished exactly what was asked of us by our membership.
Thank you, Emily. Well, we still have 10 minutes left, so I am certainly willing to entertain any other questions that anybody may have, but I don't want to hold you here if there are no questions.
Tom, can you speak a little bit to the snow load work at ASCE 722 that you've been involved in on behalf of NCSEA?
Sure. This is something, and one of the things anybody who's done a lot of snow load design realizes that when you go through the country, there are a lot of zones that are case study zones where you cannot establish a ground snow load from the maps, and that could be very frustrating. A number of states took it upon themselves to do their own studies. So in ASCE 716, there are a lot of tabulations at the in the snow load section for those special zones, but it still doesn't take care of all of the country. So what ASCE undertook was a study to determine through hundreds of thousands of research points what should be the appropriate ground snow load in all the areas throughout the lower 48 states. And this was a huge undertaking. And they have gone through, I don't know where it stands in the balloting. It was going back, they were responding to main committee ballots last week. So as long as they pacify the main committee, then hopefully it's going to make it in the code. But what we're going to see is something more like the wind loads, where we're going to have a separate map for each of the risk categories. It's going to be a ultimate or design strength snow loads, no longer an ASD snow load. It's going to get rid of not all, but the overwhelming majority of the case study areas. ASCE is going to make a tool available at no cost in order to find those snow loads. So you're not going to be able to obtain a lot of them from the maps themselves, just because the contours would be so close together. But it's a good undertaking, and NCSEA supported it financially. I just acted as the liaison in there. I didn't have a heck of a lot to do with it, other than trying to stay on top of what was going on.
Hey, Tom, I've got a question directly about CAC involvement and
Sure.
kind of joining and being part of that. So I know I still remember back to my first summit that I attended, and I got there on the Wednesday when all the committee meetings were going on, and I poked my head into the CAC meeting, and all I saw was gray hair and really smart people. And I was like, it was very intimidating for me. And I was like, I didn't feel like I had a place there, or that I would have anything to offer. So can you talk a little bit about maybe how you got to where you are within CAC, and what message you might give to a young engineer that maybe wants to start getting involved, but maybe a little bit intimidated?
Unfortunately, in my case, I didn't get involved until I was in my older years. But with the younger engineers, I would encourage them to just come in and sit in on a meeting and see what they learn. The people on the committees, yeah, granted, a lot of us don't have any hair. A lot of us have gray hair, but the one thing that everybody has in common is they're willing to share what they know, and they're happy to share what they know. They're a very welcoming group, and there's a wealth of knowledge within those committees that will help you in your practice. It's always great if you've got a question to be able to pick up the phone and give someone a call and know that you're dealing with one of the top experts in the country. It might look intimidating when you're opening up that door and seeing people you don't know, but it's important for them to take the step in there and introduce themselves and just take in what's there. And hopefully one of these days, they'll be the ones running the committee. I mean, I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, Emily, when NCSEA started its Young Member Scholarship Program, and Emily was one of our first recipients. And now she's the past president of NCSEA and current chair of the Wind Engineering Subcommittee.
And she still didn't have gray hair, so.
There's a lot of opportunity for everyone.
So can someone just send you an email and get on a distribution list to find out when the next meetings are of your subcommittees, or?
Absolutely, and that's what I just threw up there is my email address. It's also possible for people to go onto the CAC webpage on the NCSEA website, and that has the emails for all of the subcommittee chairs as well. So if they want to reach out to someone specifically, they can do that. Otherwise, I could put them in touch with the appropriate person. So that being said, unless there's any other questions, we're pretty close to the top of. Oh, is there a question there? Oh, we got a question here. Typically, do each of the NCSEA subcommittees have access to a committee members in IBC or ASCE? We do not have any direct relationships with the IBC committee members. But you'll find a lot of the Code Advisory Committee subcommittees also have members who are active in ASCE 7. I think that's about it. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. And please try to get involved with CAC, encourage your member organizations to appoint liaisons to the CAC subcommittees. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, Tom.
Take care.